Jamal Carter, a 38-year-old long-haul truck driver, returned home to the quiet Baton Rouge suburb on a sweltering July afternoon in 2008. His two-story brick house at 4726 Foster Drive stood as a testament to years of hard work, a dream he had built with his wife of 12 years, Tasha. Yet, the tranquility of the neighborhood, known for its manicured lawns and middle-class stability, felt brittle to Jamal. A series of recent break-ins had put everyone on edge, but for Jamal, an unsettling intuition whispered of trouble closer to home. Tasha greeted him with a fleeting hug, her once warm embrace now mechanical and distant. At 35, she had recently transformed herself from a stay-at-home mother into a budding entrepreneur, selling cosmetics through social media and neighborhood events. Their 11-year-old daughter, Sarah, was spending the summer with her grandmother, leaving the couple alone in what should have been a peaceful time to reconnect. Yet, over the past few months, Jamal had noticed a growing emotional void between them. Tasha had become protective of her phone, obsessed with her appearance, and evasive during conversations. The warmth in her eyes, once reserved for him, seemed dimmed. That evening, over takeout Chinese food, Tasha chatted absent-mindedly about local gossip and her expanding beauty business. Jamal listened in silence, his thoughts swirling. Her smile felt rehearsed, her words hollow. After dinner, she disappeared into their bedroom, her laughter trickling faintly through the walls as she spoke on the phone in hushed tones. Jamal retreated to his office, a converted spare room housing his laptop and a monitoring system tied to the security cameras he had installed months earlier, spurred by the neighborhood break-ins. As the evening stretched into night, Jamal found himself scrolling through the footage captured during his 2-week absence. At first, the recordings revealed nothing unusual: Tasha leaving for errands, returning with groceries, and collecting mail. But as he delved deeper, a pattern emerged that sent a chill through his chest. One afternoon, the camera captured Tasha opening the door to a man in his late 20s, sharply dressed in a navy suit, carrying a leather briefcase. Jamal froze. The embrace between them wasn't platonic, it was intimate, familiar. He recognized the man, Devin Hines, a local real estate agent Jamal had met briefly at a neighborhood barbecue the previous year. The footage showed them walking toward the living room, Devin's hand resting casually on the small of Tasha's back. They disappeared from view, but their body language left little to the imagination. Jamal replayed the clip, his hand trembling on the mouse. Over the next few days, he reviewed more footage and uncovered a damning timeline. Devin had visited multiple times during Jamal's absences, each visit during quiet weekday afternoons when the neighborhood was deserted. His black BMW was always discreetly parked on the street, never in the driveway. The calculated secrecy of it all burned deeper than the betrayal itself. On the surface, Devin Hines appeared as the epitome of success, a charismatic real estate agent who had closed millions in sales, his face frequently gracing local advertising boards. But Jamal now saw him as a predator, someone who had preyed on Tasha under the guise of professionalism. Supposedly, Devin had been helping Tasha expand her beauty business by integrating property showing events, but the footage painted a much different story. As the night dragged on, Jamal saved the incriminating videos to an external hard drive, meticulously labeling each clip by date and time. He reviewed his own trucking logs, confirming his whereabouts during each of Devin's visits: Memphis, Nashville, Atlanta. Every entry was a stark reminder of how far he had been from his home while his marriage unraveled in his absence. That night, Jamal couldn't bring himself to sleep in the same bed as Tasha. Instead, he retreated to the cab of his semi-truck, parked in their driveway. The vehicle, a Peterbilt 379 he had spent countless nights in during long hauls, now became his refuge from the storm brewing in his heart. Seated in the truck's cabin, he opened his laptop and began analyzing the footage again, his mind racing with questions he wasn't ready to confront Tasha about. For the next 3 days, Jamal watched his wife with the keen eyes of a hunter. Tasha maintained her routine, leaving the house dressed impeccably, claiming to attend beauty product demonstrations and networking events. Her phone buzzed incessantly, messages she would glance at briefly before quickly deleting. Each small gesture, her forced smile, her vague explanations, pushed Jamal further into a spiral of suspicion and despair. In her absence, he installed another security camera, this time in the living room, cleverly hidden among family photos and trinkets on the bookshelf. The angle was perfect, capturing the microfiber couch, a wedding anniversary gift from Jamal to Tasha just 3 years earlier. The thought of that couch being tainted by infidelity fueled his determination. When Tasha returned home that evening, she didn't notice the subtle addition to the room. She kissed Jamal goodnight, her lips brushing his cheek with the same distant familiarity she had shown in recent months. But Jamal's gaze lingered, unspoken words heavy in the air between them. In the following days, Jamal's fears were confirmed. On a humid Thursday afternoon, Devon's BMW pulled up to the curb. Through the feed, Jamal watched Tasha greet him in a black cocktail dress he had never seen before. Devon arrived with a bottle of wine and his briefcase, the living room camera capturing every detail of their interactions. They laughed, their bodies moving closer together on the couch, their gestures increasingly intimate. The betrayal was no longer just a suspicion. It was a reality, unfolding before Jamal's eyes. In the solitude of his truck, Jamal clenched the steering wheel, his wedding ring catching the dim light. A plan began to form in his mind, one as calculated as the betrayal he had witnessed. The betrayal had stripped him of the home he thought he knew, and now, he was determined to reclaim what little control he had left. For the next 2 days, Jamal's world narrowed to a singular focus, the surveillance feeds from his home. In the seclusion of his truck, hidden away in an abandoned industrial lot, he watched and waited. His laptop, connected to a 4G mobile hotspot, displayed live footage from the 2 security cameras he had installed. The hallway camera captured every arrival and departure, while the living room camera provided an unflinching view of the couch, now a symbol of betrayal. The longer he observed, the more meticulous Jamal became. Every interaction, every touch, every shared laugh between Tasha and Devon etched itself into his memory like a wound that refused to heal. It wasn't just the physical betrayal that tormented him, it was the casual familiarity, the way they acted as though the home he had built with his sweat and sacrifice belonged to them. Devon's easy confidence, his designer suits, and his carefully curated charm only added fuel to Jamal's growing fury. On the 3rd day, Jamal's suspicions were confirmed once more. As he stared at the feed on his laptop, Devon's black BMW glided into view, parking on the curb outside 4726 Foster Drive. Jamal's knuckles whitened as he gripped the edge of the laptop, the screen illuminating his tense features in the dim light of the truck's cabin. Through the hallway camera, he watched Tasha open the door, dressed in another elegant outfit he didn't recognize, a black cocktail dress that clung to her in ways that made his heart ache. Devon greeted her with the ease of someone who had done this many times before, carrying a bottle of wine in one hand and his signature leather briefcase in the other. Tasha's smile, bright, genuine, and reserved only for Devon, cut Jamal deeper than he thought possible. They disappeared into the living room, their movements fluid and comfortable, as if rehearsed. The living room camera captured everything. Tasha poured the wine into crystal glasses Jamal had bought for their anniversary. Devon settled into the couch, his posture relaxed, his smile practiced. They toasted, their glasses clinking softly, and for a moment, the two seemed like a couple caught in a private bubble of bliss. Then, slowly, their bodies leaned closer together. The wine was forgotten on the table as Devon's hand brushed Tasha's arm. she didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned into him, her laughter ringing out, a sound Jamal had once cherished. When their lips finally met, the image burned itself into Jamal's mind. He closed the laptop lid with a snap, unable to watch any further. In the stifling heat of the truck's cabin, his breathing came in short, ragged bursts. He clenched his fists, his wedding ring digging painfully into his palm. Anguish gave way to anger, and anger gave way to resolve. The next morning, Jamal woke early, his mind sharper than it had been in weeks. He returned home briefly, maintaining the facade of a dutiful husband preparing for another haul. Tasha barely looked up from her phone as he packed his bag, her distracted goodbye ringing hollow in his ears. Instead of heading west toward Houston, as his schedule dictated, Jamal drove his truck to the industrial lot on Shaka Drive, a desolate space hidden among defunct warehouses, perfect for what he was planning. Parked in the shadow of a dilapidated building, Jamal transformed the truck's cabin into his command center. He reviewed his trucking logs, mapping out his absences to align with Devon's visits. He double-checked the feeds from the security cameras, ensuring they were functioning correctly. Every detail of his plan had to be flawless. As he sat in the driver's seat, staring out at the empty lot, his mind drifted to the lessons he had learned in his years as a truck driver. The sheer power of an 18-wheeler, fully loaded with cargo, was something he had always respected. He knew the momentum, the force, the devastation such a vehicle could unleash. The thought lingered, growing heavier with each passing hour. That evening, Jamal returned to the live feed. As expected, Devon's car appeared once again, right on schedule. The sight of him striding confidently up to the house, carrying the same wine bottle and briefcase, made Jamal's teeth clench. He watched as Tasha opened the door, wearing yet another outfit he didn't recognize, a red dress this time, elegant and alluring. She welcomed Devon with a smile that spoke volumes, a smile that no longer belonged to Jamal. Inside, the camera captured them settling onto the couch. They talked, their voices too faint to hear but their body language speaking louder than words. Devon leaned in closer, brushing a strand of hair from Tasha's face. The gesture, intimate and tender, was more than Jamal could bear. His hand hovered over the laptop, trembling with rage. That night, Jamal's decision solidified. His years of discipline and precision as a truck driver would now serve a darker purpose. Every calculation, distance, momentum, timing, played out in his mind. He knew the weight of his fully loaded semi-truck, the way it could crush anything in its path. He imagined the impact, the destruction, the finality of it all. On the humid morning of July 15, 2008, Jamal informed Tasha that he was leaving for a 4-day route to Houston. She barely acknowledged him, her attention fixed on her phone. Jamal went through the motions of his pre-trip routine, checking the truck systems, loading his supplies, but his mind was elsewhere. Instead of heading west, Jamal drove back to the industrial lot. He spent the day reviewing the security footage, watching Tasha go about her day as if nothing was amiss. When evening fell, he saw Devon's car once again pull up to the curb. Jamal's heart pounded as he watched the scene unfold, the embrace, the wine, the laughter. This time, he didn't close the laptop. He didn't look away. He let the images burn into his mind, fueling his determination. As the night deepened, Jamal started his truck's powerful engine. The familiar rumble filled the cabin, but this time, it carried a new purpose. Driving through Baton Rouge, Jamal felt a strange sense of calm. His phone, mounted on the dashboard, streamed the live feed from the cameras. The sight of Tasha and Devon, oblivious to his approach, sharpened his focus. As he turned onto Foster Drive, his headlights illuminated the house that had once been his sanctuary. Now, it stood as a monument to betrayal. Through the bay window, he could see them, Tasha and Devon on the couch, laughing, their bodies close. Jamal's foot hovered over the accelerator, his hands gripping the steering wheel. The weight of the truck, the culmination of his anger and grief, was poised to shatter their world. The truck rumbled to a stop at the far end of Foster Drive, its engine idling as Jamal's hands gripped the wheel. The street was quiet, bathed in the soft glow of porch lights and the occasional flicker of a television through drawn curtains. The tranquil suburban neighborhood, so familiar and ordinary, now felt like the stage for a final act of destruction. Inside the truck's cabin, Jamal's phone continued to stream the live feed from the cameras. On the screen, Tasha and Devon remained oblivious to the approaching storm. They sat on the beige microfiber couch, sipping wine from the crystal glasses that Jamal had once treasured as tokens of his life with Tasha. Devon leaned in close, whispering something that made her laugh. The sound, though muted through the video feed, resonated in Jamal's memory, a laugh he had once worked tirelessly to elicit. Jamal's chest tightened, a mixture of pain and fury surging through him. The betrayal played out in real time, feeding the resolve that had taken root in his mind. He tightened his grip on the wheel, the textured surface pressing into his palms. The truck, a Peterbilt 379 he had relied on for his livelihood, now hummed with a different purpose, its massive engine waiting for his command. He exhaled sharply, his eyes narrowing. With calculated precision, Jamal shifted the truck into gear and pressed the accelerator. The diesel engine roared to life, its guttural growl cutting through the stillness of the night. The headlights illuminated the road ahead, their beams focused on the house that had once been his sanctuary. As the truck began to move, Jamal's phone screen showed Tasha and Devon glancing toward the sound, their expressions morphing from mild confusion to alarm. Inside the house, the couple's carefree evening shattered in an instant. The faint rumble of the truck grew into a deafening roar, shaking the walls as it barreled closer. Tasha rose from the couch, her face a mask of panic. Devon stood, his movements hurried and clumsy, as he grabbed for his briefcase. Through the bay window, Jamal could see them clearly now, their fear etched in every frantic motion. The truck surged forward, the weight of its fully loaded trailer amplifying its momentum. Jamal's years of experience as a truck driver had taught him the mechanics of power and impact, and he used that knowledge now with chilling precision. The Peterbilt's front grille loomed like a battering ram, its chrome surface reflecting the final, desperate moments of the couple inside. At precisely 9:47 p.m., the truck collided with the front of 4726 Foster Drive. The impact was cataclysmic. The bay window exploded inward, shards of glass scattering like shrapnel. The truck's massive grille punched through the living room, crushing the beige couch and everything in its path. The sound of splintering wood, shattering glass, and crumbling drywall echoed through the neighborhood, followed by the high-pitched wail of car alarms triggered by the vibration. Inside the house, chaos reigned. The force of the collision caused the second floor to partially collapse, sending debris raining down into the living room. Furniture splintered and toppled, and the once cozy space was reduced to a pile of wreckage. The security cameras captured the destruction in stark detail until their feeds cut to static, their lenses crushed beneath the weight of the truck. Jamal brought the truck to a halt, the engine still rumbling as he surveyed the devastation. Dust and smoke hung thick in the air, illuminated by the truck's headlights. The house, once a symbol of his hard work and dedication, now stood as a mangled shell. Jamal's gaze swept the scene, his expression unreadable. His chest heaved with the exertion of what he had just done, but his hands remained steady on the wheel. He turned off the engine and climbed down from the cab, his boots crunching on broken glass and debris. The night was filled with the distant wail of sirens as neighbors emerged from their homes, drawn by the commotion. Some shouted, others froze in shock, their phones raised to capture the aftermath. Jamal ignored them all, his focus solely on the ruins of his former life. Inside the wreckage, the bodies of Tasha and Devin lay motionless beneath the debris. Tasha's once pristine black cocktail dress was now dusted with plaster and streaked with wine. Devin's signature navy suit was torn, his hands still clutching the shattered remnants of his briefcase. The anniversary couch, once a centerpiece of the living room, was unrecognizable beneath the weight of the truck. Jamal walked to the curb and sat down, his elbows resting on his knees. The faint hum of his truck's engine faded as he stared blankly at the scene before him. Neighbors gathered at a safe distance, their murmurs of disbelief growing louder as emergency vehicles arrived. The flashing lights of police cruisers and fire trucks painted the night in alternating shades of red and white. The first responder on the scene, Officer James Martinez, approached Jamal cautiously. The truck driver sat motionless, his posture calm but resolute. When asked for identification, Jamal silently handed over his commercial driver's license, his hands steady. Officer Martinez noted the lack of panic in Jamal's demeanor, a detail that would later stand out in his report. Firefighters assessed the structural integrity of the house, wary of further collapses. Inside, paramedics confirmed what the scene had already suggested: there were no survivors. The truck, still embedded in the house, was a grim testament to the destruction Jamal had unleashed. As Jamal was handcuffed and read his Miranda rights, he offered no resistance. His stoic expression remained unchanged, even as neighbors whispered and recorded the arrest. To them, he was no longer the quiet, hard-working man they had known for years. He was something else entirely now, a man consumed by betrayal and vengeance. The night ended with Jamal seated in the back of a police cruiser, his truck still lodged in the remains of 4726 Foster Drive. The house, once a home, now stood as a hollow monument to a family torn apart by secrets, lies, and the devastating consequences of one man's breaking point. The night of July 15, 2008, marked the irrevocable destruction of 2 lives, and the unraveling of a third. As neighbors stood in clusters along Foster Drive, their whispers laced with shock and horror, Jamal Carter sat silently in the back of a Baton Rouge police cruiser. His hands, bound by cold steel cuffs, rested on his lap, his posture calm. The flashing lights of emergency vehicles painted his face in alternating red and blue, but his expression betrayed no regret, only a somber resignation. The investigation into the events of that night unfolded rapidly. Jamal's calculated approach left little doubt as to the intentionality of his actions. The police recovered the external hard drive containing the damning footage from the wreckage, alongside his laptop and the hidden security cameras. The evidence was clear: he had meticulously monitored Tasha and Devin, piecing together their affair with methodical precision. His trucking logs and GPS data confirmed his deviation from his scheduled route to Houston. The deliberate nature of his actions left no room for ambiguity. By the time Jamal was formally charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, the story had captured national attention. The quiet, suburban neighborhood became a focal point for media coverage, with reporters swarming Foster Drive to capture footage of the mangled house. Headlines painted Jamal as a man consumed by betrayal, vengeance, and the destructive weight of heartbreak. Public opinion was divided. Some sympathized with the pain of his infidelity, while others condemned the brutality of his response. The trial of Jamal Carter began 6 months later in Baton Rouge's 19th Judicial District Court. The courtroom was packed with journalists, curious locals, and the families of both victims. District Attorney Michael Anderson led the prosecution, presenting a case built on the overwhelming evidence of premeditation. Digital forensic expert Dr. James Morrison testified about the surveillance system Jamal had installed, emphasizing how the timestamps aligned perfectly with Jamal's real-time observations and the subsequent attack. The prosecution also introduced Jamal's internet search history, which included chilling queries like impact velocity of a semi-truck and Louisiana homicide sentencing guidelines. Combined with his deliberate deviation from his assigned trucking route, the evidence painted a picture of a man who had not only planned the crime but had done so with cold, calculated intent. The defense, led by veteran attorney Thomas Wright, attempted to shift the narrative. They argued that Jamal's actions were not those of a cold-blooded killer but of a man driven to the brink by psychological trauma. Psychiatrist Dr. Elena Rodriguez testified about the emotional toll of infidelity, describing how betrayal could lead to acute psychological distress, even temporary psychosis. The defense framed Jamal as a devoted husband and father who had spent years providing for his family, only to have his trust shattered. Character witnesses added conflicting dimensions to Jamal's personality. Neighbors described him as quiet, dependable, and helpful, recounting instances of his kindness, mowing lawns for elderly residents or helping with home repairs. But Tasha's close friend Mary Sullivan painted a different picture, recalling Jamal's controlling tendencies, his constant checking of Tasha's phone, and his frequent interrogations about her whereabouts. Devin Hines' reputation also came under scrutiny. Former colleagues at Red Stick Realty testified that he had a pattern of pursuing married clients, revealing 3 previous complaints filed against him with the real estate board. While Judge Sarah Matthews limited the defense's ability to delve deeply into Devin's personal life, the testimony cast him as a man who had knowingly crossed boundaries. The trial's most emotional moment came when Sarah Carter, Jamal and Tasha's 11-year-old daughter, testified via video link. Now living with her maternal grandmother, Sarah described the months leading up to the murders. Her father, once loving and attentive, had grown increasingly paranoid, installing hidden cameras and isolating himself. Her testimony about discovering one of the cameras in her bedroom visibly affected several jury members, adding a layer of unease to the narrative. After 8 days of testimony, the jury deliberated for 6 hours before delivering their verdict, guilty on 2 counts of first-degree murder. Judge Matthews sentenced Jamal to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, citing the calculated nature of his actions as evidence of a chilling disregard for human life. Jamal remained stoic as the sentence was read, his demeanor unchanged since the night of the crime. For the families of the victims, the verdict brought little solace. Tasha's family struggled to reconcile their grief with the public exposure of her affair, while Devin's parents pursued a wrongful death lawsuit against Jamal. The house at 4726 Foster Drive, reduced to a shell of its former self, remained vacant for months before being demolished in the spring of 2009. The empty lot became an unofficial memorial, with flowers occasionally appearing along the chain-link fence that surrounded it. Life in the aftermath of the tragedy was equally tumultuous for Sarah. Now living with her maternal grandmother, Eleanor Mitchell, she found herself navigating a world irrevocably altered. Her father's letters, postmarked from Angola State Penitentiary, began arriving on her 16th birthday. Each one was carefully written, filled with apologies, memories, and fatherly advice that felt tragically misplaced. "My dearest Sarah," one letter began, "not a day passes that I don't think about what I've taken from you. Your mother's smile, her laugh, the way she sang while making breakfast, these are things you should still have in your life. My actions stole not just your mother, but also your father, leaving you to navigate your teenage years alone. The weight of this truth haunts me." Sarah kept the letters in a shoebox beneath her bed, reading them late at night when the house was quiet. Though she never replied, the letters became a strange source of comfort, a tether to a past she could barely recognize. Her father wrote about teaching other inmates to read in the prison library, sharing memories of how he had taught her to read as a child. Each letter ended the same way, with endless love and bottomless regret, Dad. By 2012, Sarah had grown into a thoughtful, introspective young woman, haunted by the choices of her parents but determined to forge her own path. On her 18th birthday, she stood before the empty lot on Foster Drive, now overgrown with weeds. In her hand was her father's most recent letter. "I saw a family of cardinals outside my cell window yesterday," he wrote. The father was teaching his young ones to fly. "It reminded me of how you used to name every bird that came to our feeder. I wonder if you still notice the cardinals, or if that's another joy I've tainted." As Sarah stared at the empty lot, she realized she had a choice. The legacy of her parents' actions didn't have to define her. The past, with all its pain and betrayal, was something she couldn't change. But her future? That was hers to build. She folded the letter and placed it back in her pocket, the weight of her father's words lingering but no longer defining her. With one last glance at the vacant lot, she turned and walked away, ready to begin anew.